Okay. Just because you watch porn doesn't mean you know how to fuck. Okay. Everybody's heard that. Well, most people have heard that. Okay. And why this, like, so how does this tie into violence? Because here's the thing. I said that I'm going to title this one Dirty Talk. Just because you watch porn doesn't mean you know how to fuck. Here's the parallel. Just because you talk violence, just because you talk about being dirty and having the capacity to be dirty in defense of your life. And what do I mean by dirty? Oh yeah, man, I'd fucking gouge his eyes. I'd stab that guy. I'd kill that guy. Just because you fucking talk dirty, just because you talk tough, that does not mean that actually translates into your ability to injure somebody.
Many people understand that they can at any time become the target of a violent criminal assault. These same people know that they have a life, family, and property worth defending. Criminals understand that violence is its own language. Violence is not the sport of competition. Violence is not the art of fighting. Violence is about one thing: destruction. There are those who believe that violence, even in self-defense, is morally wrong. Then there are good people like you who know that defending yourself, family, and others, as well as your property, is not only a personal right, but a duty within a civilized society. Understand, violent assaults are won before they occur. People who learn strategy survive. People who do not will not. For those brave people who believe life is precious and worth defending, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast.
And why this topic is important is, as we go through this, it's going to become really clear. But here's the thing. Again, I always like to try to draw off things that are happening, real world experiences. This is not hypothetical shit. But I get feedback or comments from people and people that support what I do. So they hear a podcast, they see somehow they come across our training and they listen to it and they hear it. And then I'll get an email saying, yeah, man, 100% agree. And this is exactly what happened. 100% agree with what you're saying. So long as you have the mindset and so long as you're willing to be vicious and be dirty and gouge eyes and bite and stab and do all that shit, you don't have to worry about criminal violence. You don't have to worry about predators. You don't have to worry about it. And I was like, wow, that's great, right? Yeah, you're talking about this mindset. What training do you have? Are you currently doing? No. It's just so long as you know that you're willing to do that, that's all that you need in this world. You don't need anything else. And it's like, that's exactly like saying, I just watch porn, so I don't even have to worry about it. Like I'm an expert at sex. And it's like nothing could be further from the truth. And this is why this is such an important concept, right? Because people do not understand the difference between hurting somebody and injuring somebody. And then the other big thing that I'm going to use as a setup, and then I'm going to let you guys jump in on this a little bit, is I always talk about how you have to study criminality. You cannot understand violence by studying competition sport or by studying fighting arts. It's totally fucking different. You have to study criminality. And people, I don't know, like, I mean, intellectually, everybody I think understands that, but they don't fully understand it because they've never studied criminality. So how can you? Like, how can you truly understand what the difference is? So yeah, intellectually that makes sense. Competition sport, like studying an athlete and how athletes fight, the tactics, the strategies, the tools they use within the rules, within the sport, the prep they have, all that shit. Everyone goes, yeah, I get that. Then you say, yeah, you can't study that. You got to study criminality because the criminals are different. And they're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. But they've never studied criminality. So they like write down 5 things that separate criminals from competition, like from a fight. And most people, they can't do it, not accurately. Because at the end of the day, they still believe that if some criminal predatory type person attacked them and their family, it's a fight. They attack me. So how can someone in this world attack me? They come at me and they put their hands up and they start trying to punch me, or they grab me and they start putting me in a headlock and we fall to the ground and they just go, oh, well, if they're trying to punch me, that's boxing. If we end up in the ground, that's jujitsu. If they're trying to throw me, that's judo or something. You know what I mean? Like their brain, because they've never truly studied criminality, it's just a gap. It's a dark spot for them. So then when I'm making the comparison to say, not only, like, again, you got to study criminality and study violence, but you have to understand the difference between hurting and injuring. And this will be my point. People don't get that fucking violent criminals study human anatomy. I don't know a boxing gym. I don't know an MMA gym. I don't know a fucking traditional martial art gym. I mean, there are a few that will study in a certain way that studies anatomy. Now, there are some where they'll talk about, oh, we're studying the anatomy of how you can, like how you get leverage to break the joint, or how you, you put on the choke and that's a blood choke and this is a wind choke. So yeah, there is some potential anatomy within that dichotomy of framework of what they're doing. But what I said was that violent criminals study human anatomy. They study the art of fucking injury. They study car crashes. They study sport injuries. They are studying the fragile parts of the human body that we all have, and how those things, how you create injury to those things. Let's look at an egg, right? The human body is like a fucking egg. You try to put pressure top to bottom, it's so fucking durable, right? Like shockingly durable. Put pressure this way, fragile. The human body's like that. We've all had it, right? You can do the most innocuous thing. You have a little slip. Matter of fact, just before New Year's, I had a slip and landed and fractured the bone in my hand. Nothing. Like 27 years of training and never broken my hand. And yet a little slip fall and the bone breaks. Yet, you know what I mean? So the human body is this weird thing, but violent criminals study human anatomy because they always want to understand how to get it to this point, how to crack the egg this way. And here's what they learn. They learn that it is not the differences in us. It's not the fact that, Henry's 5'5", 5'4", I'm 6'4", Peter's, what are you, 6'4", 6, whatever, Max 6'1", Dustin 6 foot, whatever it is, right? Shane's, 250 pounds, Henry's 160 pounds. They could look and say, well, Henry did 5 years of kickboxing, Shane did 10 years of jiu-jitsu, Peter's done, 15 years of knife fighting. Everybody's always collecting the things that make us different. My experience in boxing, my experience in kickboxing that's what sets me apart. I have this kickboxing skills, you don't, I will beat you. So they're always looking at the differences, where violent criminals are always looking at the similarities. You got eyes? Yeah, me too. What happens when the eye is impacted? How do you create trauma to the human eye? What happens when something pierces beyond the eye? What about the knee joints? What happens when this is hit? What about, how do you damage organs? Like how much blunt force trauma, like where in the skull? Like if you were going to take a sharp object, where would you best insert that into the human body? Right. I got to train with a guy named Dr. G, who was a Gurkha. And in his course, I mean, this guy had, insane amount of confirmed kills in combat. He had pictures of a lot of his kills. And in his course, when I was working with them, he had 9 different techniques. 9, that's it, 9. Didn't matter if you had a stick, knife, or empty hands. There was nine things. But what he focused in on was the anatomy of the human body, the art of injury. And I remember him telling me one time he got up close. He was close quarter combat, and the Gurkhas are famous for their kukris. And he didn't use his kukri for this one. It was a K-bar. But he said he got in this guy. They started fighting, and he stabbed the guy. And he said he stabbed the guy, and the guy started running, and the guy took off. His blade still stuck in him. And his response, he goes, I chased that guy for had to be 2 miles through fucking jungle bush. I chased this guy and finally found the guy dead. He finally bled out. And he's like, but I learned a lesson. And he's showing a picture of the injuries. Yeah, see this, I learned something. The next time that I found myself in that situation, I just put it straight through his temple. The next time I just put the knife straight down through his clavicle bone and into his lungs or into his heart, whichever side he hits. And he's like, I just learned, like, why chase the guy for 2 miles? Who's got that kind of time and energy? And for most people, having that conversation, like you're talking about, what'd you have for breakfast this morning, is a very weird conversation to have. It's a very surreal conversation to have. And I'll try to bring this back to put some scope on this so that people aren't thinking, holy fuck, where are we going with this? when you talk about weaponizing and we talk about, listen, our foundation that everything has to be built on is lethal force. If you build any other skills, the secondary shit, the stuff that, what do you do when it's an altercation? What do you do when it's Uncle Joe at the wedding? You know, you don't need to kill Uncle Joe. What do you do if it's just some blowhard posturing drunk? Yeah, he's rude and inappropriate. He's aggressive. Maybe he's even violent in his own way, but it's not a life and death, imminent, grievous bodily harm type situation. You don't need to kill this guy. What do I do then? Well, you use secondaries. You injure to degree. You understand controls and restraints. And most likely what you fucking do is you remove, de-escalate, or deter the entire fucking thing. That's what you do. You don't engage in a fight because you don't need to. You have no legal or moral grounds to stand on if it's a fight. Now, you might have the skill sets to say, I'm going to intervene and control this person so this person doesn't inadvertently even hurt another person. Great, awesome, you do that shit. But what's the foundation that all that's built on? It has to be lethal force. So if you're talking about lethal force, again, the context determines the content. The context is somebody's going to fucking try to murder you. You and your family are in jeopardy. What do you do in this moment? Well, you have to be prepared to take life. There's no way to sugarcoat that you are training to learn to take a life. You don't want to take the life. You hope that that never has to happen. If there is any option other than having to take this person's life, that's the option that you're going to go for. But you might have to start off being 100% invested in taking this person's life, and then 15 seconds into it, the person becomes incapacitated. The person receives an injury that now stops him. He's no longer a threat. He's still alive, but he's injured and no longer a threat. Then it stops. There's a difference between defending with lethal force and punishing. And you can be defending with lethal force, injuring in an attempt to take this person's life because it is warranted, legally and morally warranted. And then a fraction of a second later, he receives an injury or they receive injuries. And now all of a sudden they're not a threat. They're still alive. You stop. You then shift gears. This is part of the training. This is why this is such a serious subject, and it has to be trained with serious intent. But most organizations, they flip this, don't they? They talk all about how to control altercations, how to subdue and how to prevail in altercations. And they might spend 3% or 1% of the time talking about, and if this is that bad, you do the old neck break and that's the end of it. Like this, you know what I mean? They gloss over, you could do this. Get him in the armbar submission and you hold him and you negotiate. And if he continues to fight, you pop the elbow, you pop the arm, you pop the ankle, you blow out the knee. Like a guy with a broken arm has never continued in a fight. Like a guy with a broken or ripped tendons or leg has never continued in a fight. They've clearly never dealt with people studying anything about criminality and understand the power of altered state. Guys on fucking bath salts and high on fucking PCP. I know a guy that one of our clients got attacked. He gouged the guy's fucking eye out of his head. The guy's eye was out of his fucking head and the guy was still coming at him. Fractured his jaw, fractured his ribs, punctured the lungs, ruptured his testicles. I mean, the guy's ear was half fucking off. And the guy was still trying to fight. Matter of fact, when the police got there, with all the multitude of injuries the guy had, the guy was trying to get off the ground and fight the police. Never once did that guy stop fighting. The only difference was his body physically didn't fucking work because our guy was trained to injure, not hurt. Had he just tried to hurt this guy, and we're going to clarify that in a bit, he would have died that night. I have zero doubt in my mind that he would have lost his life that night. Because the guy was midbrained, focused on one singular thing, and that was fucking killing him, murdering him. But he understood how to injure. Now, why this is such an important topic is because when you think about weaponizing, and this is my perspective, this is a clarity, and don't take offense to what I'm about to say because I look at myself the exact same way. Every person that's sitting here, myself included, we're not that big. We're not that strong. We're not that tough. We're not the typical alpha male. Like I outweigh everybody by at least 150, 200 pounds. I'm rippling muscle. You know what I mean? Like I've, like there are people out there that are just like specimens. They're just so fucking strong and so powerful. And that size and that strength and that athleticism and that weight, they can hurt a lot of fucking people. They can pick guys up and, fucking throw the guy over 3 cars. They can grab a guy with a hand and, like put him on the ground and pin him down like an Andre the Giant type fucking guy. There's people out there that are like physical specimens like that. I don't see myself as that guy. And I never see any of my clients as that guy. If you have strength and athleticism and power and all this stuff, I see that as like a bonus. But you got to learn how to use that. You got to learn how to weaponize that in the right way. So here's the thing. In prison, right? I say these bad guys are studying human anatomy. They're studying the art of injury to the human body. They're studying the similarities. Because the guys in prison, the shot callers, the guys that are fucking like that, the not the toughest guys, the meanest, sickest guys, right? Do not have to be the biggest, toughest guys. This is why they study anatomy. They take that shiv, they figure some shit out. They figure out that you could have the biggest fucking meanest dude walk into the yard. But that does not mean that guy owns and controls that fucking yard. That guy walks in there. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch prison shot callers. Just type it up and you can see interviews with these guys. That doesn't mean that big guy is the toughest motherfucker in the yard. He doesn't get to walk in there and start saying who does what and what goes on in that fucking yard. And if he tries to do that because he thinks he's fucking the man, right? Everyone's talking. You see Jack Reacher. You see the show Jack. I liked it. I love the series Jack Reacher. But the scene where big old Jack Reacher comes off the top bunk and fucks that guy up. And then now he's the guy. Yeah, he probably would have fucked the guy up in the fight if he did what he did there. He'd have been dead. They'd have fucking got that guy. Are you kidding me? He's not the shot caller. He's not, because they're studying him. It doesn't matter how fucking big you are. You don't have eyeballs in the back of your head. You can't be lit up 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They got numbers. They got tactics. They got shit. They're just going to find you in a life factor moment. They're going to fucking kill you. You'd have to get pulled out and put into isolation. You'd have to, you know what I mean? There's just no way. And I want you to understand that, right? Because we got good people. That's what you are. This is the people that come as good moral people. And here I am talking about prisons and violence. And you think, Jesus, who are these fucking guys? But you're good people. But you know what it is? My friends, right? They teach mixed martial arts. They train professional fighters. They were professional fighters. They're in that whole industry. And I always think of it, right? Because they're so jacked. I talked to them. They was like, oh, we got this new kid. He's like 6'2", and the kid's like, he's 15 years old. He's 6'2". He's benching like 300, like 20 times. This guy's a fucking athlete, man. He's so good. And they're training with him and they can't wait to get him fighting. They go, this kid's going to go all the way. That's who they're excited about. And I say, you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see you take one of my clients. Because who is he? Oh, he's in his mid to late 40s. Oh, is he like 6'8" and full of fucking? No. He's got a little bit of a dad bod on him. He hasn't done anything, like he works out. He's healthy, but he hasn't done anything competitive. I mean, I think he played football in junior high. You know what I mean? But he works. And what does he work? He works 9-10 hour days supporting his family. It's a white collar job. He sits at a desk most of his day. You know what I mean? Like, take him. And they never phone me and go, we got this guy, man. He's got that most average dad bod. He's fucking in his late 40s. He's not super athletic. Hell of a good guy, though. But yeah, like, what is he? He pays the fucking bills. Take that guy and apply what I'm saying. That guy, if you're teaching that guy how to hurt people, let me show you, man. I'm going to show you how to punch. I'm going to show you how to use those thigh kicks and teep kicks. I'm going to show you how to do all these moves in jiu-jitsu and all this type of stuff. And guess what? If you have to, you can control people. Maybe you hurt somebody. But you understand that is the Grand Canyon of distance away from being able to injure somebody. That is in altered state attempting to murder you. It's all these secondary stuff. Does that track? Yeah. Which one of us is Greg talking about? Yeah. The general consensus. I'm talking about all of this. Okay. So listen, this is what I want to talk about, right? I've thrown out a lot. Hopefully I've given you guys a framework for what I want to discuss and go deep on today. Because again, it's not enough to know what I'm saying. I know everybody understands what I'm saying. You've got to feel this viscerally. And I want I want some feedback off you, because my last point where I was driving about the average person is, what do you do with him? What do you do with him? What do you do day one, class one, day one? What do you do with him? How do you, and what is he saying to you? You know what he does? He comes in. And it's not about getting him to take his shirt off and weighing him and measuring the size of his muscles and seeing how athletic he is and stuff. When he comes in, why are you here? And he takes out a picture, and it's a picture of his wife and his 2 kids. He says, that's why I'm here. Because there's people in this world that they won't give a fuck whether I'm there, they're there. It doesn't matter. They will hurt these people. And I'm not George St. Pierre. I'm not that guy. But can I protect them? And then this is it. This is where we go, yeah, you can. You just got to have the fucking attitude. You got to be willing to be ruthless and do all this shit and gouge eyes and bite and all that stuff. You can tell him that all day long. He can spout that shit all day long, but it doesn't translate into actual functional effectiveness. You have to be trained to do that shit. You have to be trained to injure the human body. That's why criminals study it. There's an art to it. There's strategies to it. There's tactics to it. So give me your feedback off this, guys. What this resonates in you, what bubbles up with you, any input you have on this. I'd love to hear it.
I can start, Greg. Sorry, Dustin. I was going to say, for me, being one of the newer guys, the one thing that I initially learned and kind of picked up real quick is that change in mindset and that change in attitude of, it can't happen to me. Because even though it is fairly rare, we do read, on the news and newspapers that it does happen to the average person. Even though it is rare, it can happen. And I think that the biggest thing initially, like I said, was just getting that out of my head, that it can happen to me at any time, really, right? And I think that's the one thing that most people don't really understand, is that, well, it's such a small risk that it's going to happen. And if it does happen, I'll be able to talk my way out of it. I'll be able to run away, or whatever the case is. But maybe you can't run away, or maybe you can't talk your way out of it, right? And then what? So I think that was the biggest thing for me initially, was just to wrap my head around that.
Perfect. And it's 100% true, right? And I'm going to come back to you, Peter, because I'm going to let a couple of the guys jump in, and then I have a question for you about the process. And you're already stating that the first thing was this acceptance, the rationalization, acceptance that it can happen. You can't have denial about it. And I 100% agree. We're talking about the rare situations. Let's just call it the 1%. There is far more times you might find yourself in altercations, fights, lower level shit, where what we're talking about is not needed, but the foundation has to be built on the worst possible thing. That's what's crisis. What's the worst thing that can happen? They will not be reasoned with. You cannot talk your way out of it. And they are going to destroy you and what you love most in this world. So I 100% agree that acceptance is the first part. And then I have a question off that, but we're going to come back to that. Dustin, I think you were about to jump in, or anyone else, if you want, go ahead and jump in.
I just had a comment about, I like how you started to talk about the, mid 40s, dad bod, spends a lot of the day sitting. And I like that you highlighted that is, often the type of person who is in the weaponizing process. And the reason is because I think those are also a lot of the people who realize that they need it. Do you know what I mean? They're the people who have the wife, the kids, and they're like, man, yeah, I want to be able to protect my family. But it's also the same person most times who feels like they can't do it. Yeah. So I think it's just important to highlight that point. That's like, no, everybody can do it. You talked about the differences, the similarities, and because often I think it's the young guy who's 6'5" and jacked and everything else that you're talking about. There's often an ego that comes with that. And with that ego, there's often blinders that they might need to weaponize. And so, yeah, I just think it's important to point out to people that are listening to this that it doesn't take any set of special physicality or statistics, you know what I mean? As far as, like you said, bicep size and height and all that and all, you know what I mean? It is the average person that can do this, and they're the ones who know they need it. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Oh, it's 100%. It's so important to highlight. It's 100% true. Christy, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just really love the parallel. And I think like when you said like just because you watch porn doesn't mean you know how to fuck. And it's so true because these men are practicing violence, right? So like it's just like becoming a better lover and getting to know your partner. That takes, especially from a woman's perspective, having the best partner is them getting to know your body as a woman, right?
Mhm.
And each woman is different, but these are men who aren't just, you know, watching violence, they're living violence, they're thinking violence, they're thinking evil, they're like, oh, I tried this time, it didn't work, what would be better? So to me, like the parallel that you drew was like light bulbs and fireworks of like, holy fuck, that couldn't be a better example of exactly what you do for like as a company, what you teach the guys. I think it's just because yeah, these guys are in it. They're, if you take the analogy, they're getting to know their partner's body. You know what I mean? They're diving deep into like what turns this person off, what, you know, pushes their buttons, because they are out there thinking violence, doing violence, practicing it. So I think the parallel is just like mind blowing and exactly what the company brings. And I just loved it.
Yeah, thank you. And a couple of things that you just said, right? I want to highlight it. They are living violence. We're talking about, you have to study criminality to understand violence. These guys are living violence. They're using trial and error, and they're learning. I say this all the time, right? In my workshop, I'm always talking about the fact that these guys have a blueprint. They actually have a blueprint for how to successfully assault, murder, and rape. And I don't know if people hear that, but I don't know if people cue in on that. Like that should terrify
totally.
People.
Yes, it does.
Right.
And it totally makes sense. Like, yes.
And the other word that you said is the word intimate. And it is so powerful. Let me draw this parallel, because Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, in his book, On Killing, On Combat, Warrior Mindset, he talks about this. The link between violence and human violence and human sexuality is very close.
100%.
And there's a lot of things. People in our society are very uncomfortable talking about true sex, like really talking about intimacy and sex, and they're equally uncomfortable talking about violence. True violence.
Yep.
The act of stabbing somebody, right, is akin to the act of sex, because you're literally penetrating somebody else's body. There's no denial of this. This is why the resistance to killing at the closer the range, the stronger the resistance. And this is something that spent years. This used to be one of our main focuses, is getting people to understand that the further you are away from an adversary, the easier it is to injure, to kill. But the closer that you get, the harder that is, the greater the resistance. And you have to understand that about our human experience and how it works. We're talking about the fact that like you have to learn how to injure, how to potentially end a human's life from close proximity.
Yep.
There's no way to sugarcoat this. Like it's an intimate, intense discussion and study. But you have to study that.
And also too, like just going off, like diving deeper, what you say is like, these people actually enjoy intimacy with violence. Unlike the rest of the society where we are trying to find that intimacy and connection within ourselves or our partner, and we're willing to take the time and go the distance and meet those expectations. Like there are those people walking around who their whole sole purpose is to find their intimacy with violence, to be a predator.
Yeah, 100%.
That is what they want, and that is what they strive for.
Yes. This kind of comes back to a part of the question that I was going to reframe to Peter when he's talking about having to come to that acceptance that although rare, boy, there are these people out there. And that acceptance, although it might not seem big, right? Like what he's talking about, what he has accomplished of just being able to rationalize and go, yeah, like this could happen, right? Like it's rare. Like none of us sitting here think, I don't know. Do you guys walk out in the world and see everybody as fucking evil and out to get you? And no, we sit here and just go, most people in this world are amazing. They're beautiful. A complete stranger is willing to help in some of the toughest times of our lives. Complete strangers would rally around people. We've seen it so many times in our society. And that's the part we focus in on. And that's how we live in this world. And the more connected you are to your violent side, the more connected you are to the peaceful side of your nature. You have more compassion and more empathy for people because you understand the toxic, corrosive, and septic nature of fucking war and destruction, and who wants it? None of us want it, right? So there are these people out there, and when you really go, these people aren't just willing to hurt you. It's sadistic. Like, it's such a dark, toxic thing to have somebody intimately be invested in murdering you, like the destruction of you. The level of violence for most people, it's unpalatable. It's unconscionable. They cannot let their minds go there. Yet what I'm saying is when you take this 45-year-old, and this is just an average, right? You could be 30, it could be 50, it doesn't matter. You take this quote unquote average person who has something so dear to him, family, loved ones, children, his own life. They value it so much. They love it so much that they want to protect it. You understand that the foundational piece is saying to this guy, listen, you're not the greatest athlete. And yes, you can train, you can condition, you can learn, you can grow, but honestly, you're not going to get to that level. You're as an athlete, as a world-class martial artist, there are only a small percentage that ever ascend to a level of that type of skill. You're not there. But here's the thing, you don't need to be there. But here's what has to happen. You have to really understand the difference here, man. We need to teach you how to injure the human body. And I've said this too. The greatest weapon is the human mind and its capacity to think evil. These violent criminals study anatomy and they think evil. They study human injury and they think of evil, sadistic ways to injure that person. Now, let me throw this out there for you guys, and then anyone else has comments, please jump in. But I want to throw out here kind of the 3 ingredients, because maybe this will give a reframe for everybody, because you've heard these, but maybe this will give you a reframe. There's 3 ingredients that go along with injuring, not hurting, injuring. You could apply them and say, oh, I could apply these to hurting somebody, injuring somebody. Speed, surprise, and violence of action. Now, I want you to apply it, and I want you to step into the role of a prison shot caller. You're not the biggest, not only are you not the biggest fucking guy, you're the smallest fucking guy. You're the weakest guy in that prison, but you run that fucking prison. You've put your time in, you run it. People, you decide what happens on that yard. You decide who lives and who fucking dies. You decide. And as the smallest and weakest, but you're intimately connected with violence because this is your world. And if you didn't do that, you'd have been dead years ago. And so you think of these ingredients. Look at that guy. Look at that group of guys making a play, making fucking moves. Big guys, strong guys, jack and weight every single day in the yard. Look at these guys. But you understand 3 ingredients: speed, surprise, and violence of action. Speed is what? We're going to hit these motherfuckers when they least expect it. It's going to hit them so fast. It's going to come out of the blue. That's the type of speed they're talking about. Then it's going to be surprise. How is it going to be surprise? Because 3 of you are going to start fucking beating these guys with your shoes. They're going to be like, what the fuck is that? Beating them with the shoes while the other 3 guys are fucking taking their toothbrushes and shivving them with those fucking things. Speed, surprise, and violence of action. You're not just going to randomly start stabbing these guys. You're fucking targeted. First thing you want to do in that big guy right there, you go behind him and you slit his fucking Achilles tendon. That's all I want you to do. You get him behind the ankle, get him the Achilles tendon, get him behind the knee, you cut the tendons. Then when he cuts the tendons, you grab his head, you're shoving it straight into his temple. You're going straight down into the lungs. You're like, you know what I mean? Like target, you push it right through the kidney. It's not random blitzing all over the place. Does that happen in prisons? Of course that happens. But that happens more when you tend to want to make a statement. Study the real deal. Study the tier 1, right? You know, you want to study firearms tactics. Everybody wants to go and train with ex-Navy SEALs, ex-Delta Force operators. Why? Because they're the cream of the crop. I want to learn their tactics. I want that guy to teach me to shoot. I want that guy to teach me how to clear a room. I want that guy to teach me all this shit. Well, go to see prison shot callers. Go find the best of the best and understand what they're doing. Understand how they use violence. And you turn around and you say, holy Christ, man, like this is getting too extreme for me. Why? Because at the end of the day, when you're fighting for your life or the life of your child, where's the line you won't cross? What's the line that you won't cross? You have to understand that's the foundation of this. Maybe this is a good time. And again, please interrupt me, guys, if you have comments, right? Because I'm just going to throw points out and I want feedback. So don't be afraid to unmute and interrupt. Yes.
One quick thought on what you just said, and it comes back to context determines content. You know, I think when people start to feel a lot of pushback to violence in the way we're talking about it today, as soon as you give them the right context, like, you know what I mean? You give them the home invasion scenario where their kids are asleep in their room and the people are coming up the stairs and you find them in your house in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, this level of violence, the speed, the surprise, violence of action, all of a sudden they can relate and be like, oh yeah, okay, I would do that. So it's got to, in the right context, it all makes sense. But if you're trying to talk about it sterile with no real context to it, then yeah, it's going to be off-putting for a lot of people, right?
Yes, 100%. Matter of fact, thank you so much for jumping in on that, Dustin, because that just literally is the best segue for the point I was about to make. So you just made it already. And now I want to give even a slightly different piece of context. Here's the thing. And I'm going to use the Gracies again as an example. And I'll just be real clear, state it real clear. Like I'm specifically going to reference Henry Gracie and his brother Harry Gracie. And they run the Gracie Academy, and they're phenomenal. I have all the respect for them. They are super fucking talented. Their program is unbelievable. So I'm pro Gracie all the way, right? But here's the thing. In the context, I understand where the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fits. And in terms of a fight, in the terms of those lower level things, it's a phenomenal art and system. And I respect these guys. For law enforcement, they have a Gracie survivals tactic program. It absolutely should be mandatory because as police officers, that's the whole goal, is they understand how to enter these situations and bring some sort of hopefully lesser level of force to control these situations and prevent them from ever escalating to a lethal use of force type situation. So there's all these positives. So that's my disclaimer to it. But now I'm going to go the opposite way. Henry is always preaching about how jiu-jitsu is great because in jiu-jitsu, when someone is trying to hurt you, someone's trying to punch you in the face, someone's trying to break your arm, someone's trying to hurt you, jiu-jitsu can be used to take control of them and never hurt them. And he throws a lot of examples like the Kids Bullyproof program, which is great. And he has these examples. And he had an interview not too long ago. A kid at school a guy was trying to fight, was bullying him. The guy was trying to punch him and trying to fight him. And yeah, it's a bigger kid. And this kid starts punching you in the face and you fall down on the ground and maybe he's kicking you a couple times. Their student was able to control the guy, put him on the ground, never had to hit the guy. And that was a big point that he made. Never had to hit him. So he was able to protect himself, control the situation till teachers, principals all showed up. The other kid got suspended and the kid that defended himself did not get suspended. Why? Because he never even threw a punch. I mean, that is fucking awesome. So awesome. So good. Why? Because it was an altercation. And it worked. It worked exactly like it's supposed to work. And whether that was a kid or whether that was an adult, and at work, a client comes in and the guy's, customer, man, he's all fucking freaked out and he's pushing it over the cash register, or he's in somebody's face pointing a finger, or he tries to hit the guy and the adult grabs him, puts him on the ground, subdues him, police come, other coworkers, they perfect, never had to hit the guy, right? And he's always talking. If I was there, I could, one day he came home and said his gardener, his lawn maintenance guy, and another guy that were there got in a fight. And he was so upset. He's like, oh, I missed it. Like he wanted to be there for the fight because he wanted to be able to interject himself into that situation. And then the other person that was there said, oh, you're lucky you weren't here. Someone could have got hurt. He said, no, that's the thing. If I was here, nobody would have got hurt. They wouldn't have got hurt. I wouldn't have got hurt because I have jiu-jitsu. And in that, I was like, oh, so interesting, right? But then, not that long ago, wakes up in the middle of the night in his house. Hears all this fucking noise and commotion and people running around and all this shit. Danger. Family asleep. To his home. What does he do? Unlocks his fucking firearm. Takes his fucking gun, which he trains a ton in. Very well trained with the firearm. He's no fucking joke. He picks up his gun and he starts clearing his house and going around. Gets to the front door. He's looking outside, opens the door, and it's like fucking 20 cops in his yard, and they're apprehending these 2-3 guys, whatever it is. dangerous guys, all the shit, but the cops are there. And he's like, oh, fuck. And the next day writes a post. Thank God for my Glock. Thank God for my firearms training. And thank God for the LAPD, because then nobody had to end up dead or shot. The second he picked up that gun, what was he willing to do? Put a fucking bullet through somebody's head. Whether it's, I point that gun, pull the trigger, and I send a fucking metal projectile hurling at 2,000 feet per second, put it straight through his eye and out the back of his fucking head, or whether I take my thumb or take a tactical pen or take my knife and do the exact same thing, what's the fucking difference? Do you understand? So there's acknowledgement. So to me, it's hypocritical. Because what you're saying is all of this big bubble of altercations, we can, without injuring anybody, passively, never having to strike anybody, we can subdue, control, and restrain. Let's just say that's 1,000% true. I have no argument with that. Beautiful. Jiu-jitsu is the only art you need. Sell your fucking gun. Sell your fucking gun. Why do you have a gun? Oh, fuck. Because you acknowledge there's a whole different game. There's a whole different fucking level. Well, what if you don't have a gun? What if that level finds you out with your family? There's no, unless I'm wrong, there's no concealed carry in California, the state of California. But apparently the second you leave your home, well, that doesn't exist. There is no lethal force. You don't need that. You just need the gentle art of jiu-jitsu. Never have to strike someone. Never have to hit somebody. Does this, you know what I mean? So, and with that gun, does he train with the gun? Yeah, he trains with the gun. Why? Because you better know how to fucking use it. Because just saying, I got a fucking gun, someone breaks in my house, I will put a fucking bullet between his eyes. Shoot that target over there. It's only 7 feet away. Yeah, you fucking missed. The only way you'd hit that guy between the fucking eyes is if you got lucky. You got no skills, you got no training. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. The only thing you need to do, you just got to be vicious, gouge eyes, bite fucking people, stab people, break bottles on their head, blah, 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 blah. Do you know how to stabilize the guy? Right, I'll tell you a story. I had a guy come in, and this guy trained with us for about, I don't know, a year, something like that, a year. And this guy was a big gun guy, big gun guy. Guns were his thing, right? Guns, 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 shoot everybody, shoot everybody, shoot everybody. And then he's doing the training because he wants to balance out, which I give him full credit for. He wants to balance out. But there's one thing he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to do any ground fighting. Why? Because he doesn't have the conditioning to do the ground fighting. So everyone's saying, here's what you need to do. You have to do a little bit of conditioning to strengthen this. You got to develop this, work on some flexibility, but you don't need to ground fight. We're not getting down there looking for arm bars and submissions, but you got to understand how to stabilize and destabilize. If you can't stabilize, how are you going to inflict? Because he's like, I'll just gouge, I just bite. Great tools. But if you can't stabilize the guy so that you can gouge him uninterrupted, if you can't destabilize him so that he's not punching your face in, so that you can get to a position of stability and control where you can bite uninterrupted, you cannot gouge and bite. It won't work. Nope, it will. So one day he's doing a private, bring him over, say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're rolling and I'm trying to get him and he won't do it. And I'm saying, okay, tell you what, I want you to go ahead and gouge my eyes. Go ahead and gouge, go ahead and bite, go ahead and punch me in the balls, grab my balls, do whatever the fuck you want to do it. But I'm going to tell you something, you better do it. You got to really fucking go for it. You know, and if you get it, you can ease off halfway through, but you got to go hard to get it. Otherwise, you're never going to experience this. Oh, I can't. You try. Right? So then he's sitting there and you can tell he's not really doing it. So punch him in the face. Now all of a sudden he's fucking mad. Now all of a sudden he's lit up. Now all of a sudden he's like, oh, we're fighting now. Okay. So he starts trying to go for my eyes, starts trying to reach down and grab the ball, starts trying to go in to bite. But guess what? Can't. Why can't he? Because he can't stabilize. His hand goes for my eyes and I just hook his hand, just swipe his hand. Then he's off base and balance. So I just sweep his legs. So this goes on for like 3-4 minutes. Now, guess what? For the first 40 seconds, he's trying like a motherfucker. At second 46, because he's burned all his gas. At about 1 minute and 5 seconds, he's like, okay, I'm done. But it doesn't finish. So, oh, no, we're not done. Just because you fail, I'm just getting started. So now I just held him into a position. I stabilized him. And I can't remember who else was there. Somebody else was there helping me with the private, was sitting off to the side. And I said, okay, punch this fucker. The guy's his face, you can see the panic, and the guy's like, what? I said, punch this fucker. So the guy come over, put a glove on, just started punching him, started kicking him. And for 2 minutes, just laid a beating on this guy. Now, did we threshold it? Yes, we thresholded it, of course. Not beating the shit out of my client. But you had to do enough to do what? Now, most people are like, I'm not trained. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to train with this guy. Had to do what? He had to have an experience. Not an experience where he was injured. Not an experience where he was even really hurt. He had to have an experience of vulnerability. An experience, and at the end of that, when we stop, you break down and you analyze why. What happened? Why couldn't you just get the eyes? Why couldn't you get the balls? You tried as hard as you want, and I didn't do shit to you. I just lied back and played D. I didn't do nothing to you. I just lied back, but if your hand went for my eye, I just instinctively went, well, I'm not just going to allow that. And you were so off balance, I just pushed on your knee a bit and you fucking fell over. Like I didn't do some elevator lift and some butterfly guard to you. I wasn't using jujitsu against you. I was just common sense, not letting you put your finger in my eye. But you couldn't stabilize. You couldn't actually implement the vicious talk. And then once you gassed out and quit, the most important lesson is you had to recognize that when you failed, you're at my mercy. And I was playing the bad guy at that moment. Had I just stopped and let nothing else happen, he would have learned the wrong lesson. Does that make sense? Why that had to go on? Now he was 100% fine. He wasn't hurt, but he had to feel exhaustion and being pulled out and complete vulnerability with somebody standing there going, oh man, would I be? Yes, Peter.
That's exactly how I felt last Sunday when we did our training, and you guys put me to the ringer, and it was that feeling of, oh my God, if this was real, I would be in big trouble.
Yes.
Especially in the latter part of it.
Yes. And here's the thing with that, right? We all experience that, but it's the courage to experience it in a safe way, but you can still experience that just like this guy did. Now, here's the difference. And this is what makes this shit so real and so powerful and so fun. That guy who had that experience 7 days later quit. Gone. Just said, nope. I with money and stuff, I have these courses I want to go take. And I'm like, oh, really? What are these other courses? Yeah, I feel like I've done this for a year now. I got to resharpen my shooting skills. And then he was going to take a rappelling course because he wanted to spider rappel. He wanted to be able to rappel in upside down because that was somehow upping his survival skills. He needed rappelling skills. He had a whole list of survival skills, and this is what he needed to go do. But what he really was doing is when you put the truth in front of people, it's really hard for them to accept. All he had to do was go, that sucked. Same thing you felt, go, wow, that was, whew. And you did good, but you can sit there and be like, yeah, but boy, I felt that shit, man. Like I was fighting myself. Like you gas out, boy, the vulnerability down there is terrifying, which is again, why. And I'll circle back to throw some praise to the Gracies. They themselves say all the time, in a violent encounter, the last fucking place you want to be is on the ground. Their goal is to teach people how to get off the ground. Henry's greatest analogy is, listen, if you don't know how to swim, yet you're working around water all the time, and your worst nightmare is if you slip and fall in, you're going to drown, who better to go to learn how to get out of the pool than the people that swim all the time, like the greatest swimmers in the world. They don't teach just jujitsu. Their whole fundamental foundation is to teach people how to get the fuck off the ground. And I praise them for that. We use their skills of how to stabilize and destabilize to get off the ground or to be able to inflict damage when it's necessary. Comes directly from the Gracie system. Right, my instructors were students of Horian and Hickson since the mid 80s, before UFC, before anyone ever heard of the Gracies. So full credit to the Gracies, because that's where we pull that part of it. We just don't use any of the other shit because doesn't fit in with our ultimate agenda. I think Mac, you had your hand up. Mac first, then Shane jump in. Go ahead, Mac.
Yeah, I was just listening to your story there about the guy training, and it kind of, to me, it made me think back to one of your earlier points about like 40-year-old guy with the dad bod with, who's working the 9 to 5 and doesn't have a lot of time. And just, I can connect with that and like that mindset. And one of the fears I can feel is like, I know for a fact you're only as good as the last time you trained. And when you tell that story, I think a lot of people can connect with that because, you have that worry. Like, what if you get in a situation? What if you gas out? I know I felt that. What if I'm not strong enough? What if, and you have all these what ifs. And like, if you're in that situation and you only have maybe a few hours a week to train or a few hours a month to train, you want to know what you're doing, what you're training with, is that it is the stuff that's going to help you the most. And if you're only as good as the last time you trained, then what you trained last, if it's only a few hours every week or a few hours every month, it better be the best shit. And it's got to be, like you said, the lethal force has to be the foundation, not, something you fall back to after you've, crossed 3 lines before it. It's like, okay, now I'm going to get serious because, my communications failed, my punching and kicking's failed and my jiu-jitsu's failed. Okay, now I'm going to get serious. Like, it's too late then. It's got to be the foundation. And the other thing, like, it made me think of with, the experiences I've had, even if they're low-level altercations, the amount of, like we've done other lectures on the SNS and the conditioned black and the tunnel vision and all those things that happen. Like, I know for a fact that if I'm in anything serious, it's going to be autopilot. What I'm doing is not going to be like, I'm thinking through every step of the way. That would be great. No, I'm going to fall. Like, what I'm doing, all my capabilities I can pull out in training, what I'm actually going to pull out in the real world might be only 10 or 20% of that. So it better be the best crap, because otherwise I'm in a lot of trouble. And I think everybody can connect with that. A professional fighter, I watch combat sports, boxing, UFC, and I love it. It's entertaining. I admire the athleticism and, I admire their martial capabilities, but it's not what I do. But they talk about ring rust for a fighter who's been out of the ring for 2 years. If you're the dad bod who hasn't been in even a low level altercation in 10 years and you're training to protect your wife and kids, what's the ring rust on that? And especially if you don't have a full training fight camp before you get in the ring. You don't have your coaches in between rounds trying to remind you and interrupt your conditioned black and your tunnel vision and say, man, like every time he does this, you're like, just, change levels, just hit him with this left hook, just do this. And the fighter goes, oh yeah, because he's so out of it. And it's like, you got a whole training camp. You knew you were going to be here tonight for this fight. You walk out your door and you're at the Walmart parking lot and someone jumps you. You don't have coaches there coaching you. You didn't prepare for that in that sense. Like, to me, there's so many different angles to come at the point that the foundation has to be, like you said, the lethal force, because it's just so critical.
Perfect. Beautifully said. And it's 100% correct. Shane, you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, your story and kind of talking about how if a person knows that they have all these things that they can do, yeah, well, I can just gouge eyes, bite, and all that stuff. It brought up kind of like the same point Mac was saying, is you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. And if you've never trained any of that shit, how are you going to expect to actually pull it off, right? So
it's 100%. And just to build off your, Shane, is like, just to be real clear, right? The client that I was talking about, that I referenced in the story, he had an unwillingness to learn it. And I knew that going into it. So the lesson that he needed to have was to say, listen, like, again, it's like a guy going, I've got a gun. I will shoot you with my gun. It's not that easy, yet it is. It's the egg. There's kids, right? How many times you guys read a story about somewhere in the States where they have concealed carry and a mother or father, somebody has their firearms in their purse shopping? I'm thinking of one case in particular, and the mother's at the shelf grabbing stuff, and then she has a 2-year-old child is playing with her purse and pulls the gun out and squeezes the trigger, like manages to pull the trigger, and the bullet does what? Hits his mother right in the head, kills her instantaneously on the spot. Like it's the egg, right? Certain way, no training, no skill, hits her right in the head. What are the odds of that? A violent criminal. Look at fucking half the rappers in this world. They've been shot half a dozen times, every single one of them, yet they live. What is 50 Cent? 50 Cent got shot how many times? 9 times, 12 times? He's still fucking alive. Yet a 2-year-old accidentally gets his mother's firearm, pulls the trigger, hits her straight in the head and kills her. It's not easy to just go, I got a gun, I'll shoot you. It just is, doesn't work that way sometimes. Most times it doesn't not work that way, man. So it's the same thing, but here's what it was. He kept going. Step 3. Step 3 is viciousness. Step 3 is gouge eye. Step 3 is bite. Step 3 is rupture the testicles. What I was trying to say to him, listen, you don't need to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You don't even need to be a white belt in jiu-jitsu. But what you're not hearing is there is a step 1 and a step 2. Step 1, points of control. Step 2, stabilize those points of control. Step 3, inflict pain. That's it. It does not take the skill. The 45-year-old dad bod who doesn't have a lot of hours to train, like exactly what Mac's point was, you need to, like, what you're doing is going, great. You need to walk in and go, fuck, man, I got to fight next week for my life. Not for fun, not for sport, not for money, not for fame, not for fortune, to protect what I fucking love. All right, listen, on the ground, step 1, step 2, here's the points of control. Here's how you stabilize it. Then what do I do, Greg? What do I do? If I can just for a fraction of a second, if I can manage to get my points of control and I can manage to stabilize for a second, right in that moment, you're going to get that thumb. You're going to get that knife out. You're going to get that tack pen. You're going to put it right through his fucking eye. You're going to cut this tendon. You're going to rupture this testicle. You're going to go straight up the fucking anus. Whatever it is you're going to do, this is how you injure that fucking person. This is how you injure him. Fast, quick, with very little effort into it. I don't care how big he is. The anatomy of the human injury. That's what we study. And then it's just step 1, step 2, boom. And then you get the injury. And once you get the injury, it's compounding. Now he's injured. He can still want to kill you, but he's injured. And then you get another injury and another injury, and it compounds that way. It's very simple. Most of the blocks come down to mental. He did not want to learn the simplest step 1, 2. His denial is, no, I'll just do this. And then when that got ripped away from him, you have to face the truth, or you have to go back into denial and you have to go into avoidance. He went into avoidance. Brad.
Yeah, I just want to chime in because the last story really ties into something you said when we first started, and that was, everybody they could watch something, they have an image, and there's so many times people are like, well, I would just do this in this situation. I would just do this. I would just do that. I just do the next thing. It's like that's all I would do. And, I think we'd all be naive if we didn't say that we've seen something, we've participated in something, and after the result of that thing, we'd be like, fuck, I thought I'd be way better at that. I actually wasn't that good at that shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've had it, it's like, fuck, like, like, I thought I'd be better. It's like, well, the reason why I'm not better, I've never fucking done it before. But we've had this image, we've seen other people do it. And sometimes those other people, they make it look really easy. And we overlay that on top of us. And that's what happens a lot of time with people in Hollywood, people watching movies and people watching MMA. And, how many times you see people watching an MMA thing and they're all yelling at the freaking screen saying, do this, do that. And the next thing is, well, you're not there. Do you know what I mean? So, it just really makes me connect to one of the sayings that we've used tons in the past is like, there's no such thing as tough. There's trained and there's untrained.
Yep.
And you know what? That's fact. And you could look at something and violence aside and be like, yeah, I could do that. It's like, I thought it'd be way better. But the severity of that type of situation, when you're talking about violence and people are saying, are taking violence and actually combining that with just altercation, saying, I would just do this, that, and the next thing without even having any sort of training is the most dangerous and ridiculous thing in the world, because the stakes are the absolute highest. So it's just a connection I wanted to use. And
it's huge. It's huge, and it's perfect, and it's clear. And if I can throw a couple of analogies on it, everyone remember, do you remember watching I don't want to say the original, but remember Zorro with Antonio Banderas when they launched the Zorro franchise with him in it? You watch the first movie and he's standing in there, and Anthony Hopkins, who was Zorro, who's now a young guy, he picks up the sword and says, do you know how to use that thing? He says, of course I do. The pointy end goes into the other man. It's a sword. I stab him. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what it's like? To me, it's like, and I love animals. So I'm not going to go on an animal thing here, but it's a bullfighter. And it's me standing there going, if I had to fight a bull and I got the swords and the cape, and it's like, oh yeah, I read on it. They stab the bull right here in the shoulder blades. They do this. And as I'm saying that, I got a 4-month-old puppy in front of me, and the puppy's running at me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I would do this, and I would do this, and I would do this. And it's like, this would be fucking easy. And then all of a sudden you get in the ring and a fucking mad fucking bull, giant full grown, what do they fucking things weigh? Thousands of pounds, comes flying at you, fucking massive horns, sharp. You think you're going to bullfight that bull? No, you're not going to bullfight that bull. You're going to get run over. You know what I mean? But it's those analogies of like, oh, this is super simple. A knife is a knife. People carry knives. Oh, you stick the pointy end in the other man. And it's like, do you even do you understand the strategies, the tactics, and the tools that make it simple? Do you understand the anatomy of injury? Are you even okay with injuring? Have you even fully rationalized and accepted that you got to injure this person? And maybe this will be my last analogy, guys. And if you want to throw more into it, great. But maybe this is where we'll start to wind this one down for today. But after having the conversation we had, I just want you to hold an image in your head for a second. And I think what'll happen now is you're going to see it differently. Hopefully we've changed the perception. And you guys already know this stuff. You guys are training this stuff. But I can feel this, and I think you'll feel it. And other people listening to this who maybe aren't as experienced what we're talking about, they'll feel this. But Paul used to always tell me, and I want you to imagine this. Imagine right now seeing two guys in an octagon, let's say, because that's more typical for right now. You get two guys going to an octagon, and they have their first round. They have a 5-minute round, and you just see them fighting and all this stuff. Stand up on the ground, throwing punches, throwing the kicks. And they're trying their best. They want to win, right? These are guys that are both engaged in this process. So they come out, they come back, finish round one, they come back to their corner. And like Dustin, I think it was Dustin, or maybe it was Mac. The cornermen are giving them the tips, right? Getting them back in the game. Hey, focus on this. Watch this. When he's doing this, you got to do this. So they're getting those tips. Round two starts, they go back out. They go at each other. And they're going at it, and it's intense, and it's a brawl, right? There's blood. There's cuts. Right? These guys are exhausted, but they're still bone and sinew, man. Fucking muscle, bone, and sinew is fucking flexing, and these guys are having that battle. Round ends, they go back to the corner. But that second last round, one guy, one side is fucking losing it. He's done. He hits an emotional threshold. Now he's ready to do something fucking crazy. This guy wants to win. This guy is taken over by desperation. And so his coach cuts the fucking glove off his one hand, cuts it open, leaves the back of the glove there, but cuts the front open, pulls out his fucking 5.5-inch serrated knife, flips it open, and tucks it into the guy's fucking hand. So it looks like he's still got the glove on, but he's got that serrated blade in his hand. Round three, ref steps to the center of the ring. The ref says, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's fucking go. Let's get it on. And now that one guy comes out with a whole different fucking agenda. His agenda isn't to hurt anymore. His agenda is to fucking destroy this guy. He hates this guy with a fucking passion. This guy is his fucking mortal enemy. And there's no rationalization to it, right? You can't understand why he would hit this point, but he hit this point of fucking he breaks mentally and emotionally. He has this knife. What's going to happen? What do you see happening in that moment right now? Is it the punching back and forth? Is it the same battle? Or is it different? Because does he come in and he measures his range and he measures his distance? And the guy throws a couple punches. His opponent throws a couple punches and he takes a couple little hits. But he doesn't use the knife. He doesn't reveal that yet. He just sits there. He moves and he moves. And as the guy goes to throw yet another punch or he goes to throw a kick, he shoots in. He sees his opportunity. He slides in on the guy. He just connects to the guy's body. And all of a sudden from the outside, you just see this pathetic little hit. But that hit is very calculated. That hit is right to the fucking kidneys. And after one or two stabs to the kidney, you see the guy's hand slide up and grab a handful of his hair and pull the guy's head up. He straightens his neck. And then you see this guy's hand go straight to the base of his fucking skull. And then you see the guy fall limp on the fucking ground. And when he falls limp on the ground, his hand comes up and he's doing something to his face. And you see 5 more punches to the face, which really aren't punches, they're stabs, blade straight through the eye. And all of a sudden there's fucking blood everywhere. And all of a sudden this has all happened. It's all transpired in a matter of 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds. And then all of a sudden his corner starts to figure out something's fucking wrong. The ref figures out something's fucking wrong. The crowd figures out something's fucking wrong. And then it's chaos and fucking pandemonium. People jump in that fucking ring. Half the people start backing up, screaming, and fucking absolute chaos erupts in that entire place. What just happened? What did we just witness? You see the shift of like, do you understand how inefficient a punch is? How inefficient a kick is in comparison to what I just described? It changes everything. And a lot of people have never felt this contrast. And you got to understand that this analogy of this fighter who fucking has a mental break, that is where violent criminal predators start. You weren't prepped for this. That guy in the ring, although he didn't know he had a knife, he had better odds of surviving. Why? Because he went in there knowing this guy's going to try to fight him. He went in there with his hands up. He just doesn't understand that the game had changed. He didn't understand that we weren't just trying to win or hurt each other. Hurting is fine. We accept hurting. It's injuring that we don't accept. Look at any sport. Anytime that they discover something that could injure, they change it. They ban it. They take the rules out. But this is the world that you swim in. This is the world that we live in. Every day you walk out your front door. Yes, statistically low. Yes, 100%. But you know what also, to counter that a little bit, it's not as rare as you often think either. Right? Mac works in corrections. You could tell stories of guy driving to work. We've told this story different times. Driving to work, gets in a little fender bender, but the guy gets in a fender bender with, crazy fucking criminal, pulls the gun out and shoots the guy. Because he has no insurance, doesn't want to get caught. Whatever his fucking psychotic ass is. Murders this fucking guy in cold blood. So now my story about this fighter in the ring, is that really so far-fetched? Is that really a fantasy? Well, yeah, for that happening inside of a ring, yeah, it probably is. But for that type of fucking cold, calloused human being, anybody fathom that human beings right now are walking around with fucking mental illness on a scale we've probably never fucking seen before? Living in a world, like living in unprecedented fucking times? Like, it is as rare as it is, and thank God it is rare for the part of the world that we live in. It also is not as rare as most people fucking hope. And that's that. And right there is where you cap this, because you're one of two people. You either close your fucking eyes and go, I believe that it's rare enough that I personally will never experience this. Or you go, yeah, I get it. It's rare, but some fucking crazy fucking people. People 2 years ago, 2.5, coming on 3 years ago, people are willing to fight each other over fucking toilet paper. Willing to fight each other over toilet paper. What has to happen for people to go, I'm willing to kill you? I'll fight you over toilet paper, but I'll fucking kill you over food. I'll kill you over whatever it is. And now you're talking about having good fucking people scared that are willing to kill, willing to do what it takes to survive. Panic. Like, are we really that far fucking away from that type of a scenario erupting? Not really. Never mind the hundreds, if not thousands, of violent criminals that we have on the fucking streets. People, anyways, to me, this was it's such a powerful conversation, because I need all of our guys to understand that I'm not the biggest, fastest, strongest, toughest guy out there. I'm not the greatest athlete out there. But when I think about defending myself, when I think about weaponizing the primary skills, the tools that I'm going to live and die by, there's a couple things. One, I see myself as being far more fucking cunning, right? And that's something I was going to bring into this conversation earlier, but we ran out of time, so we'll save that for another podcast. But cunning in the sense that, like prison shot callers, in defense of my life, speed, surprise, and violence of action, understanding human anatomy, being 100% invested in creating injury on the person that is the direct threat to my life and the life of my family, the person that is trying to murder me. Speed, surprise, violence of action, understand and get invested in injuring that individual to the point that they're not a threat. And when they're not a threat, we leave. Whether they have air in their lungs and are breathing and continue to live or not, when they're not a threat, that's all I care about. That energy, when it's a threat, has to be destroyed. It's you or it's them. And this, again, this whole conversation can go under the guise of hard realities. We have that part of our lecture process that we talk about, the hard realities of violence. It's not a conversation a lot of people want to have. They just don't. They just want desperately for there to be another solution, another way. But in those certain situations, you know, when you reach to unlock that gun box and pull your gun out, you're there. Just most people think if they have the gun, they won't have to do that. Or again, why? Because I can kill you from 7 to 10 feet away, and that makes a difference. But if I got to get right up in your face, if you're right on me and I got to have my hand on that blade or that tack pen or my thumb, and I've got to do something, I've got to penetrate your body to destroy you, to feel that life force leaving your body, that's a whole other fucking level, folks. That's the highest level of resistance. And yet that is where rapes and murders and assaults, that's where they happen in this civilian world. On a fucking battlefield, they happen from hundreds, if not thousands of yards or kilometers away. Not for us, right? It's face to face. It's that fucking intimate range. All right, everybody. Anybody have any final thoughts they want to throw in on this?
I'll just say, Greg, again, being newer, I hope most people don't realize that they need to make a change by going through something that changes their lives in the sense of, you know, violence. I hope most people that listen to this will realize that it's so important. Again, even if you're just the average person just walking down the street, anything can happen. So I really hope that most people like myself and everybody else here didn't have to go through violence to realize that they need to make a change. They just, you know, it just happens for them.
Yeah. Well said. And I echo that same sentiment, right? You know, we always say two types of people, the people that have experienced violence and the people that haven't yet, but have recognized that it's possible. And that's where we want to catch people, is on the front end. So well said. And I appreciate that input. And here's the other side, folks, too. The training in of itself is not dangerous to do, right? Like, you know what I mean? You do not have to be this mean, maniacal, tough fucking criminal person. No, it's the opposite. Good, moral people that want to learn to protect themselves. The subject matter is hard, it's intense, it's real, but the training, anybody can do this. So please do not be dissuaded and think that somehow you can't do this. Every age, every mobility, everyone has the right to life, liberty, freedom, security, and defend it.
I actually have a story about that by my brother, who we often have this discussion. He has when he's born, he was born with after he was born, he had polio.
Okay.
So one of his legs is basically no muscles. So
okay,
basically you can tell that he has an issue.
Yeah.
And he's very interested in knowing. For the same reason, he's like the guy who really all his life had this handicap, who's been kind of waiting on his self-image, and he was a hard worker, hardest worker in the family, like one of my hero, basically.
Yeah.
But every time we have a discussion about training and thing, and that's his problem. He understand Filipino martial art, he understand a little bit, but he goes and he's in Australia. So they have a lot of the Filipino because they're close by.
Yeah.
So he understands the need for him because he's a trucker.
Yeah.
A black trucker, handicapped in Australia, outback.
Yeah. He's got a few ingredients potentially working against him, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. So to him it's real, and he feel it. Black trucker, not trucker in the mining industry there.
Yeah.
So it's like you know the how it is. So he's looking for the right. So every time he think he found the place. So he's also this guy, they kind of very martial, like Filipino, they show the thing. So he goes there. What he feels first, first of all, he feels for his handicap, they're all like nice athletes. So that's a first stop. Secondly, the only thing they don't really pay attention to him because they don't have the baggage to customize their training to him.
Yep.
That's the second problem. The third problem, he ended up feeling ostracized because they don't want to train with him because they don't know how to threshold or how to train with somebody like that because they're scared to hurt him.
Yep.
So that's it, and that's his huge his three problem, and he's looking for it. And I keep telling you, come, you should train because that's. And I showed him the video where you trained with Brad's relative was
Mike,
Mike, so
100% blind,
I say, look, when I show this video, I never show people that I never tell he's blind. I look at this guy, they look, and then after a while I say, oh, he's blind. so that's a big issue. And every time I talk to him, I tell him like, you need to come here because that's what Greg's do, that's what we do. We customize to how you are, and so that you can think. So it's very out there. It's a very big lack. A lot of people I best want to do it. They go to a gym and they feel that's not their place.
100%. Because, and a great point. And at the end of it too, like there's 10 different strategies, and within that, the tactics and the tools. But within those 10 strategies, that playbook of how to counter the violent criminal's blueprint, they adapt to the person. That's how it has to be. We've worked with people that can't lift an arm up above their shoulder. You work with someone that has, we had a guy that had surgery on both his Achilles tendons, and they had to fuse his feet. He couldn't flex his feet. So he walked flat footed, which changed his entire mobility and his stability and stuff. And yet the plays exist, and you just adapt to how we are doing this. Everyone has the right to learn to defend themselves, and everyone can execute the strategies. How we do it can be uniquely individual, but that's the difference. If I teach an art like the Filipino art, you come in and say, well, here's what we're doing. Figure out how you can best do this. And then, like you say, people don't want to train with them because they're like, well, I don't know how to adapt this. Like the instructors aren't telling, all that. And then of course that fuels his self-image that he can't defend himself because of some sort of disability.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you can't outrun or outperform who you believe yourself to be. And so now we have somebody out there who has the desire to want to protect. He has the need. He's in higher risk environments. He has the need. And yet there is nothing that is teaching him that he has the capability, the ability, that he can change his self-image.
Exactly.
He is the fucking protector. He has the greatest desire, which is I want. So we should hook up with him because we can do it virtual now, right? The technology effect. So we need to connect with him and see so long as he has access to the internet, we can start training him.
Talking about the self-image, that's true, because I always have to fight his self-image when we are talking. I said, no, you gotta go. You can. And it's like, no, but it's like a fight. Yeah.
The first step with him is going to be having to change that paradigm, give him a different experience that sets him free or opens him up to the possibility that, holy fuck, maybe I can do something like this. Right. So violence is very, very different. And when you start understanding what we talked about tonight, that it's not about fighting, it's about injuring. Like, you don't, Richard Marcenko, right? Being the bad guy's easy. Fighting and competing, that's hard. I'd rather just win. You know what I mean? He's like, I got polio, my leg's shorter. I don't want to fucking fight. I'd rather just win. I'd rather just survive. And that part becomes easy, but he needs to have a different reframe and a different experience. And that's what this does for everybody, right? Which is why we're so passionate about sharing these conversations and doing that. So maybe we'd start off by getting him to listen to this episode of the podcast and see if that maybe opens up his mind a little bit and we can start there. So.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Love it. Appreciate it, Abdul. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, gentlemen, anybody have any final parts, comments, concerns?
Yeah,
If not,
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
Just for the people who think, the chances of something violent happening to them in their life are very small. Mm-hmm. So it only has to happen once for it to completely destroy your life, right? Or completely change things forever. So it's like, do you want to take that chance even? So.
Yeah, 100%. It only has to happen once. And when it does happen, it happens quick and it's not what you ever expected. And it's hard. So, all right, everybody. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys being a part of this podcast, getting your input, especially with guys inner circle guys like yourself, that it's just so important that people hear your perspectives, and thank you for sharing them. And that's where we'll wrap up for today, guys. So I appreciate everybody. Please stay safe, stay weaponized. We will chat again soon. Good. Okay. Sorry, guys. We can wrap up here too. That'll give me my official cut place on it. But thank you guys so much. Hopefully you guys got something out of this conversation. Was it good? Intense for a Saturday morning.
It was good. I think it's going to be a really good podcast for people to dial into. And it's such an important concept. Hopefully we did a good job of expressing what we were talking about, but I think it felt really good. So it felt very coherent. So I really appreciate it, guys. It means a lot. So
something that occurred to me, which I guess isn't really quite ready for podcast yet. I'll see if there's a way I can get this information from work in a way that we can use it outside of work. But like, just because you're talking about the prisons and stuff, and I was thinking about how Canadian prisons are different than American prisons and assaults and everything that happens. And one of the things that's very apparent to me is there's all these fights and assaults that take place in Canadian prisons, but there's no charges for it. So, if there's, let's say, a fight on a unit 3 times a week, that's documented where the staff are aware of it and, everybody's separated. That's an assault where one guy attacks another guy and either they fight or it's very one-sided or 2 guys attack one, however it happens. So let's say, there's 1,000 of these in a year, just in Edmonton alone at the remand center. But, there's 50 to 70 guys on that unit who witness those fights. So then you're building in the criminal population over a course of however long they're in jail, there's tens of thousands of impressions, like where they're physically witnessing an assault on someone else where there's no consequences, or the consequences are that you get moved off the unit, you have a bloody nose, and that's it. There's no criminal charges. If anything, there's a lot of benefits to it because, you attack someone else, you get a lot of credit for it. You beat someone up you didn't like, you got status within a gang, like whatever the reason is, it's all benefits with no downside. And everybody watching that is also programming themselves that, oh, this is how you fight. And then they get released from jail. You're good. If you have 100 impressions where your blueprint is that be the one who goes first because you're going to often do better. And if someone attacks you, you fight back, and this is how you do it. Or you and your buddy jump someone else if they're bigger and stronger than you because you're going to have better odds, and then nothing happens. There's no consequences. It's all win-win-win.
Crazy.
This is just building the blueprint over and over and over again. And I don't think people realize, like, that's how Canada is different with these criminals. Even if they're not the gangbangers, their blueprint has been set. Like, hundreds, if not thousands, of impressions of this. And I'm just like, I wish I could get the stats and use it in a way that you could use it for a podcast or something.
Yeah,
it's pretty insane. Like, there's no charges. There's maybe 2 or 3 assault charges a year for thousands of fights. Assaults.
That's crazy, eh? Yeah, I thought they got charged for it for sure, but that's insane.
No,
well, let me know if you can, because that would be worth having a podcast on something like that, right?
Yeah, it's we're training the criminal population of Canada to go first, go hard, and not worry about consequences. That's the good. So
that is so insane, right? Fuck. Yeah, I don't need to do this. I think I'm going to retire, guys. Take up knitting or something, something less. Yeah, the world is so safe right now that
maybe you want to learn to spider rappel.
It would be pretty cool to come in upside down in the apocalypse. They come off the roof and upside down and have.
I didn't know you were the one who trained Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
Jason Bourne, the Spartans, he trains them all.
Yeah, we train them all. Yeah. As long as you got enough olive oil, all the greats come to you.
Shit, I thought Shane was gonna get real serious there. He let his hair down.
Let his hair down. Yeah, fuck, half of it. He's like, I didn't know we were getting intense. He's like, he's like, I don't. Partly, I looks good, and I don't want to see all that's coming at me either. You see that knife, Shane? Fuck no, I got my hair in my eyes, man.
Hair deploy.
Hair deploy.
Like there, like the story too, if you want to use it, I don't know, but it happened to us this week. Like I lost a brother-in-law,
Yeah.
basically. And for those who say that things cannot happen to them or something like that, look at the statistic of that. Basically, when I was there, he had a car accident.
Yeah.
When I was there, he broke his hips. And I remember I even sold him some how do you call it? The thing to walk with.
Oh, like a walker or a cane or something like that?
Yeah. So 3 months for rehabilitation and things like that. He does everything. The same day, literally, the day, because he lives in another city, he goes, the day they tell him, you're done, you're ready, no more walker or whatever.
Yeah.
That same day, he's go to take his ticket to go back home, another car hit him, he died 2 days.
Holy fuck.
Like that was 2 days he passed away in the car. So in terms of statistic, to tell that things like how what are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds of that? Fuck me. You know, it's that thing in life. Yeah, we need to, unfortunately, we get reminded of it every now and then, right? Which is shit happens. And you don't plan for that shit to happen, but it fucking happens, and nobody thinks it does until it does. And yeah, man, that's crazy. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And listen, if you found this content valuable, here's 3 different ways that I can help you weaponize for free. First, grab a free copy of my ebook, The Education of a Weaponized Man. To get your free copy today, head to ebook.awakentheprotector.ca. Number 2, you can take a free workshop where you will discover the 10 insights violent criminals don't want you to know. To take this workshop, head to workshop.awakentheprotector.ca. The third way is to head to my website and check out all of my freeline programs that cover everything from mindset to strategies. To check us out, go to awakentheprotector.ca. And finally, leave a 5-star review so that we can reach more good people like you who are ready to weaponize and rise regardless.